Hey, Ron Newcomb here with the Indie Coach Podcast. I'm here with my new friend Stephen Murray, who I started to stalk a little bit on LinkedIn because I was just a fan of the content he was putting out, and I was fortunate enough to where he agreed to come onto the podcast. So I'm looking forward to our conversation, and we just can kind of dive in. I think that's kind of the best way to do it. Um, for the people that don't know a little bit of your background, I think that'd probably be
Mm.
the right place to start. I believe you kind of came from a music background, which I find interesting that a lot of creatives kind of start in that track. And
Yeah.
that writing songs, etc., is also a form of storytelling. And many of them, I think, find themselves in the river of entertainment or creative and then go into filmmaking or storytelling as a secondary option. So, well, not a
Yeah.
secondary option, but as a natural progression of
Yeah.
storytelling and things. So maybe we could start there with just kind of your background.
Yeah. Well, Ron, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to chat. What an incredible time we're in. Who I can't remember who it was that said, "May you never live in interesting times." And like, but we certainly are. Yes, my background is long and kind of crazy. I'll do an abridged version. Interestingly, movies were always my first passion and actually my goal. From the age of 10, I became obsessed with movies, and while my friends were out, putting quarters into video game boxes at the mall, I was reading books on filmmaking and making a stop motion animation sequel to Star Wars in my garage. So I was straight up obsessed, and then um, along comes high school and the realization that girls like guitars, and so I started trying to figure out how to bang out some songs. And I was studying visual communications at Indiana University. Always had an art, penchant, and so I was pursuing kind of uh, what was at the time called commercial art in advertising, and that was my area of focus. So marketing was a huge piece of my education. But while I was at university, I guess a demo tape, a buddy of mine took a demo tape to a publisher in Nashville, Tennessee, and I wound up getting signed as a songwriter. And was going back and forth to Nashville between I was at Indiana University, so going back and forth between Indiana and Nashville pretty much every weekend from the age of 19. And that began my education. And again, it is a long and twisted path, but it began my education in the business of entertainment. And I wound up getting signed as an artist and started a band with some buddies and making records. This was all during the indie music revolution. The trajectory of my career has sort of coincided with multiple revolutions in the entertainment industry. And so the first one for me was the indie music revolution, which was less about my ability to succeed as an artist and more about my ability to help other artists. And so um, that's really where I started learning the most important lessons that even still to this day I utilize every day in what I do. And it started with a couple of fundamental truths that I learned. One is that the entertainment industry is actually horrible at what it does. It has a really, really poor success rate. In the music industry, the saying was the top 1% of every record company's roster funds the bottom 99%. And I was, an art school kid and a punk rocker in Nashville, Tennessee. But I was smart enough to know that I was not in the 1%. And so, I realized that I needed to try and do something different. So wound up starting a little record company with some friends and recording, on borrowed equipment in our backyard, studio that we built. And that's where I saw kind of the first key truism that has been applied to everything that I've done since, and that is that I came to realize that it's the artist, it's the creators, it's the talent that has the most meaningful relationship with the audience. It's not this record company. In the case of film and TV, it's not the studio, it's not the network, it's not the platform. It's the creators themselves, it's the artists. That's the emotional relationship. And if you can harness that emotional relationship, it is the most powerful form of marketing in the world. And so everything I've done since then really started in that little backyard studio, in the early 90s, to date myself, where we were trying to figure out how to not just get fans to buy our records and listen and show up at our shows, but to go and tell their friends about our artists, and that has been the through line of everything I've done since.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we're probably around the same age, so I definitely remember that musical renaissance that we had, and a lot
Yeah.
of friends fell prey to that. And I was just with a bunch the other day, just phenomenal artists unto their own right. And
Mm,
funny enough, many of them have carried on into filmmaking,
yeah.
uh, ironically. But that was a sweet moment. And what's funny is talking to younger people, they always kind of ask, did you all know, particularly growing up in the 80s, um, did you know what you had at the time? And I know a lot of people say they didn't. I swear,
Yeah.
I feel like we did. I feel like
Mm,
we kind of knew what we had. War was not before us. It wasn't behind us. We had just peace, prosperity, a moment of before the internet, before just getting, creatively drained and just taking all different kinds of directions. I think in some innocent way, although there was stuff to complain about, certainly we did kind of know what we had. And I'm trying to take a more optimistic approach to even now, because I imagine 25 years from now, I'm going to be looking back on the 2025 and saying, man, if I had only known what we kind of had. And
yeah.
I appreciate that kind of foundation and optimistic background. And I realize you also have a very entrepreneurial spirit, which kind of leads into one of the things that really caught my eye about you, because I kind of feel like not the industry, but the fans, the audience, the independent filmmakers are shouting something. And I think a
Hmm.
few of us are picking up. And it's almost like you're doing it through a frequency. You're trying to zero in on exactly what is being said so that we can meet
Mm,
that need.
yeah.
And I found that you have come up with something that I just think is spot on. I think is really cool. I think is so needed. I'm really rooting that this is going to take hold, and that is Bingeable. And
Mm.
so, what inspired you to launch that? I believe back in 2016 now, so you have a few miles behind you. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, what did it kind of take also um to get that going? Because it was almost,
Yeah.
if it was a little bit sooner, it might have been too early, to kind of trigger that where the need
Yeah.
wasn't quite as prevalent. So for your
Yeah.
insight back even in 2016, which means you probably had the idea in 2014. So yeah, would love to get kind of the run up of Bingeable.
Interestingly, I wrote the business plan for Bingeable in 2007.
Wow.
And it came out of my experience. I went through the digital music revolution. That was yet another revolution. I had a record company in New York with some well-known people. For me, the digital music revolution was an absolute godsend. I was one of the people screaming from the mountaintop that we need to embrace this, while the industry was actually doing everything it could uh, you know, to blow itself up. It literally, and I've written a three part article about this that's still on my Substack. I haven't published it on LinkedIn, but about what I saw during that time. And the reason I bring that up and feel like that's an important to add to this context is because it is absolutely happening again, but this time it's with the movie and TV industry. It was the music industry at that time that just honestly turned a blind eye to the audience completely changing their behaviors, completely changing what they wanted and how they wanted it, how they wanted to find it, how they wanted to consume it. And that was outside of the tiny little silo that the music industry controlled. And while they were desperately trying to force people back into their bucket, it was too late. There was nothing they could do. And inevitably, all of those moves led them to become nothing more than vendors to two technology companies, Apple and Spotify. Literally, what the music industry was arguably one of the most influential, culturally influential industries on the planet. And now it is a peddler of ones and zeros. It's not the same industry anymore. That is saying nothing to about the artists themselves. There are extraordinary artists making amazing music, but the industry is just hobbled. It's broken. It doesn't work the same way anymore. And I fear we are at that moment again now with filmed entertainment, and I'm sure we'll revisit that in a second. But going back to your question about the kind of the genesis and or the origin story of Bingeable. I had come out of the music space, battered and bruised from being one of the ones out there desperately trying to innovate and take advantage of the digital music revolution, and that wound up with some incredible successes and catastrophic, epic failures. I'm writing a book about it. And it's it was a rough time, but it actually afforded me the opportunity to make the transition into film, which is film and TV, which was where my passion was. So I wound up producing a couple of films, and just getting my feet wet, learning a little bit about the business process of making filmed entertainment. And I wound up getting a gig to work on some projects at MTV in New York. And while I was there, a couple of things happened. First of all, there was this new weird thing known as social media that was happening. And when I saw social media, I saw the promised land. I recognized if it is the talent that has the relationship with the audience, then social media makes that a direct transactional relationship. And if we can figure out how to transmit filmed entertainment over the internet, then we can and figure out how to harness that direct relationship between artist, talent, and fan. Then we can completely circumvent the traditional system, which is a network of middlemen that is specifically designed to make money off of movies that lose money. And so that became my total focus at that point. But it was not possible at that time to deliver a movie over the internet. So I knew it was going to have to wait. So what I focused on instead was, when my little record company back in Nashville, we used street team marketing. Street team marketing, for those who don't know, I've told this story many times, but for us, it was literally we made up little baseball hats with our record company logo on it. And we would go to Ohio and go to a record store. We'd go to a shopping mall, or we'd go to a college campus, and we'd find that kid who just looked like us, and we said, here's a baseball hat. Tell all of your friends you're in the music business now, and get your friends to buy our CDs, get your friends to come to the shows. And when they do, I tell this story all the time. When they show up at the venue, you're going to be behind the velvet rope with a lanyard on that says all access pass. And you're going to say, I'll meet you guys after the show. I'm going to go have a beer with the band. Right. So the juice of that was so powerful that they would, go out there and move mountains for us. And it cost us a baseball hat. Okay. That's street team marketing. All of a sudden social media comes along, and I'm like, that's digital street teams. You can do the same thing. And that was the real spark behind the idea that eventually became Bingeable. But at that time, all we could really do was focus just on more of it of focusing on how we can harness those audiences. So with a couple of friends, started an agency called Amplifier. And the whole pitch of Amplifier was that it was a Trojan horse. First of all, it was just I was like, this is how we're going to learn how to kind of codify in the digital era that fan to talent relationship and how we turn those fans into evangelists on behalf of the talent. We called them amplifiers. And the pitch was, if you can harness your fan base in such a way, they will go do so much marketing for you, you can reduce your traditional marketing spend. And we went for almost 2 years of pitching to blank stares across boardroom tables for just over and over. People just saying social what? Like it was fascinating. And we wound up getting our first yes through multiple twists and turns and a couple of direct and indirect relationships. We wound up with our first client being a young musical artist who has gone on to be the biggest artist in the world. I'm not going to drop any names, but she got it and really understood what we were doing. And frankly, and I say this all the time as well, we added no value to her career whatsoever. But I honestly, truly, in my heart, believe that she gave me mine. I learned so much watching her do what she did from afar. I mean, I wasn't, it's not like I was sitting in the room with her every day, but like I got to see how her team, how the machine worked around her, and how she led it, and she led it. She was and is the boss, and it was fascinating. And I just took notes. I just took notes. I saw what worked. I saw what didn't. We tried various different things. We did some really, really cool stuff. I don't want to be just completely self-effacing here. I mean, we did some really, really cool stuff, but it was successful because of her, not because of us. And so that started laying that foundation. So I had that idea. Again, Amplifier was a Trojan horse in my mind. It was about learning how we do this. And after we worked with her, we worked with multiple huge artists. We started getting into movies and TV shows. We started getting into brands and doing these same amplification marketing strategies for all of these different clients. And all the while, I'm just thinking, how do we get to the point where we can build a platform that makes it so that the stars of a film, the artists who provide music for the soundtrack, the writers, directors, producers, grips, and PAs, and their fans can become the marketing energy behind a movie or TV show so that we don't have to go through the traditional network of middlemen that make up the marketing and distribution and exhibition funnel for all filmed entertainment that, as I said earlier, is specifically designed to make money whether the project is profitable or not. And it was not until 2016 that we saw a window of opportunity to start building it. And I'll pause there because that was a long way to get to 2016. But I think it's important to understand kind of the path that got us here. Once we got into 2016, all sorts of things went happened that have allowed us to keep going, but also kept us from kind of going big and wide as we had hoped during that entire time. And COVID,
Sure.
the strikes, all of those things hit at very specific, very impactful times for us, and set us back quite a ways. And
Yeah.
we've stuck around, and as it turns out, we feel very strongly the market has sort of has come to the idea as opposed to us kind of forcing the idea in the market.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm seeing that, I think, kind of play out. And you all are now, in my mind at least, and from what I can see, very much way out in front, you know, which I'm sure you all can appreciate that point of view, but I'm sure it was hard going through it.
Oh yeah,
I did a streaming platform for fantasy and sci-fi content 3 months before COVID hit. And of course,
yeah,
that a streaming platform, the lifeblood is original content. And so
yeah.
we tried to, and we lasted actually for 3 years and then just ultimately just could not, because, content doesn't just happen. There needs to be a runway. So
Mm.
I know the impact that can take. And I'm sure trying to weather that had to be a challenge. And then
Yeah.
the strikes, I mean,
Yeah.
I saw the same thing with a lot of friends. Um, yeah, and the industry, as we all know, has been impactful. And yet
Yeah.
I'm trying to, again, take on that optimistic mindset to see as an indie creator, not that even I didn't even potentially intend to be an indie creator. Like if I would have got hired by like the studios or something, I probably would have done it. But here I am. And so I'm one amongst many with a long history. And therefore I must take that optimistic bravado. Otherwise, at least we go off, quietly into the darkness.
Yeah.
Um, because that's what will happen if we let it. People will not necessarily force us to get it, but then they will cry out for the loss of the media that we could have brought in and the stories that we need to be able to
Yeah.
tell. So that longevity in my mind is pretty important. And the crowd part is extremely important. And you've had a little bit, I believe, of doing some crowdfunding yourself somewhat uniquely, if I'm right. Can you talk a little bit about that experience?
Um, well, so let me say a couple of things, and then I'll get to that. I believe you're referring to the movie Kayadita.
Yes.
So I'll get to that in a second. But you said something that I think was really important about choosing to be optimistic, and there are a couple of ways that I uh, maintain an optimistic, uh, pliable persistence that has allowed me to kind of keep going. And one of the things is that I always remind myself that COVID impacted everybody. It was catastrophic, and our initial plan was to make a movie that was specifically designed to kind of highlight what we think works best with this bingeable model, this idea of talent to fan and fan to friend, amplification marketing. Um, uh, and then COVID hits and we lose it all, right? It's just gone, and we lost the option to the script, we lost the cast, we lost, it all just fell away. But what I remind myself of is that Quibi spent $2 billion and didn't survive COVID, and we're still here.
Yeah.
So yes, we are a fraction of the size, and we operate, this is fueled not as much by money, although it's been extremely expensive and has sucked the life out of our bank accounts, all of us individually, for years now. But we survived, and we kept going, and we managed to keep the lights on, and so I'm extremely proud of that. Also, all of the things, the COVID and the strikes, what it did was it set the predicate for a complete desperate need for transformation. And you said something very kind, which is that we're kind of out here ahead. And I always joke, I am perfectly fine being the world's oldest overnight success. Doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't matter. That's actually a badge of honor. But the reality is that it's more that we have not been progressing. It's been that the industry is kind of falling towards the need for something new. And just our main qualification is that we have a different approach. It's just a different approach. And I think it matches much more of what's happening at the consumer level. It's not what's happening at the industry level. And I talked about this on another podcast recently. That I think the revolution we are experiencing right now in my lifetime, it's the first one where the consumer behavior shift is not being driven by a new technology. It's being driven by a complete change in the product market fit. They just simply don't want the products that are being put out there in the way that they're being put out there anymore. So they are going to other things, and it's not new technology. It's technology that's been around for a long, long time. AI is going to change the way movies and TV shows are made, but it's not going to change the way movies and TV shows are consumed necessarily. Maybe it will. I guess I shouldn't speak so definitively. AI is changing everything, but it seems to me that there's still a massive demand for entertainment. And that is a massive opportunity if you are willing to meet the audiences where they are, as opposed to trying to draw them back into an old system that frankly has at best plateaued and is more more accurately could be defined as crumbling. Um, so. Calladita. Uh, first and foremost, it is an absolutely wonderful film from a Spanish writer director by the name of Miguel Faust. Just a lovely, beautiful film. We had nothing to do with its fundraising, other than the fact that I was also, like many, many others, an investor in the film by purchasing NFTs. It was fully financed by the
Cool.
sale of NFTs. So Miguel made a short film version of Calladita. And for everybody who's a filmmaker out there, pay attention. This is one of the new ways that it's getting done, right? So he made a short film uh, version of Calladita. Actually, it was the same lead actress that ended up in the feature length, who's just amazing, Paula Grimaldo. And he actually wound up selling it to HBO. And so it was on HBO Max, and so he had a lot of attention, but he was very, very smart. He was an early adopter of kind of NFTs, and was really fascinated by it. He was also frustrated by the system as a young filmmaker. He made this beautiful film that he sold to HBO, and he couldn't get a meeting. Like he couldn't even get a general, like he was not getting any of the attention that he thought he should get. So he decided to do it on his own. And as somebody who was already fascinated with NFTs, he very wisely kept the digital Web3 rights to the short film out of his agreement with HBO. And so what he did was he sold still frames from the short film as NFTs, and he raised his entire budget, almost his entire budget, um, for the film, and went off and made what amounted to a lovely movie. Um, there's a company called Decentralized Pictures, which is actually the Coppolas, and their CEO, who's a dear friend of mine, Leo Matchett. They did I don't want to call it a contest. That's unfair, but it was essentially a call for entries by Steven Soderbergh. Uh, and the award was completion funds. So it had to be a film that was basically done but needed a little bit more money to finish. And Stephen, after a global search, they chose Calladita as the winner of the award. It was called the Andrews Bernard Award, and they Stephen had not committed to actually put his name on anything. He was just simply going to be, it was his money. He actually is the one who wrote the check. It was
Wow.
out of his money.
Wow.
Um, and But he loved the movie so much that he wound up putting his name on it. And so that was kind of where the movie was. And then uh, we just, I've known Miguel as a result of my involvement in that community and just kind of hanging around and being, I had a Twitter space that I used to run that previously Miguel was the host of it, and then I took over. So we had crossed paths and knew each other. And one day, in like the most LA of LA things, he and I are sitting down and having a drink at the Soho House, which is just disgusting to even say that. But we were sitting at the Soho House, and we just were like, you know what? Why don't we? You've got distribution in South America, you've got distribution in Europe. Why don't, or I guess Spain, only Spain. Why don't we see what we can do and put it up on Bingeable and see if we can make it work? So that wound up being our first film that we put up. Now, expectations were very low. We knew that it didn't have a lot of the elements that a Bingeable release needs, which is kind of a fan base that is connected to the talent involved in the project in some way that they're clamoring for the film. These were all Spanish actors. It was a Spanish language film. Steven Soderbergh, while an Academy Award winning writer, director, producer, doesn't have social media. So it's like kind of, oh, well, that's not really going to help us. So, we knew that it was going to be small, and it performed to our expectations, which were low. But man, we learned so much as a result of it. It was an incredible opportunity to see what we can do, what we can't do. We were able to A/B test things like traditional marketing versus amplification marketing, and just got an unbelievable data as a result of it. But let's refer to really everything we've done up to this point as kind of our alpha stage. And we are getting ready to what we're working on getting to that kind of next phase, which hopefully will be making a lot more noise.
Yeah, that's fantastic. What a great story. Um, early on, I was also looking at blockchain. I had a really good friend of mine
Yeah,
that hit the NFT market just right, and it timed it perfectly. They raised a bunch of
mm,
capital, did a little
yeah,
video game on the chain. Just, it really, really crushed it. For those listeners that are not quite sure, you hear the term Web3 thrown around quite a bit. Can you help
yeah.
me narrow in exactly what Web3 kind of entails, at least from your
Mm,
understanding? I won't hold you to anything definite, but from what you understand, what is Web?
yeah. Well, okay. So the easiest way for me to describe it is it's blockchain powered technologies. That's Web3. I mean, there are a lot of philosophies. It's a very if you follow politics, it's a very libertarian sort of mindset. It's very much damn the man. It's like I don't, we want to be outside of the system. We don't, so there's a lot of rebellious elements to it, which I'm quite fond of philosophically. Although I would not necessarily align myself with the political elements of it, but I do love the fact that at its heart, what blockchain technology is built to do is two things. One is to be transparent, and two is to be immutable. Immutable meaning that it can't be messed with without someone knowing it. Um, for me, the vision for Bingeable was always to have our main competitive advantage be transparent accounting. If you know anything about Hollywood, you know that it is a system veiled in mystery. Um, I would argue that it is more veiled in obfuscation and deceit than honesty and transparency. So in my mind, having an honest, transparent, fair economic model and accounting system was going to be our biggest competitive advantage. And in fact, the first version of Bingeable that we built our own transparent accounting system. But there was a flaw, and that flaw was unless you can read millions of lines of code, I could have easily been shaving pennies off and no one would have known, right? And my dear departed mother, God rest her, would never have allowed me to do that, but I could have, and that therefore it was a truism. I was just saying we're transparent, but unless you can read code, you would never know. And then I was introduced in 2016, around that time, after we built the first version of this, to blockchain, and I was like, there it is. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form a crypto maxi. I dabbled in meme coins and ETH and Bitcoin, all stuff. I played around with it, and it's fascinating, it's interesting. But for me, it was actually the blockchain technology being able to provide an immutable and transparent accounting system. That was all that mattered to me. So Bingeable is not built with any sort of token model. We've thought about it. We may do something down the road, who knows? But it was just the idea of a distributed, what we refer to as a distributed ledger, meaning that all stakeholders can see in as real time as blockchain is capable of doing, which blockchain is notoriously slow, but as close to real time as we can get, you can see every transaction that's happening on your movie as it's happening. You can see what you're supposed to get paid, and know, because you can actually go in and see the blockchain, that nobody's messing with your money. And so we set about rebuilding the whole thing, literally the whole thing from top to bottom again, using
Wow.
blockchain. Yeah.
Wow. That's bold statement. Funny enough, I wrote vigorously and with a lot of passion and zeal around this topic of transparency and
Hmm.
accounting. I'm pretty confident I'm getting the movie right, but for perspective of the audience, Forrest Gump, I believe it's Forrest Gump, technically is still in the red.
Oh,
Because
honestly, Ron, you could have named any movie.
yeah,
You
right.
could have named. So I talk about this all the time. I've got Emma Watson's accounting statements from Warner Brothers for the Harry Potter movies, and you would not believe what they're doing to poor Hermione Granger. It's mind blowing. According to Warner Brothers, all seven of the movies are still in the red. She has never gotten profit participation points on that movie, according to these accounting statements.
Well,
They're like, if you open up the Hollywood Reporter or Deadline or any of these, there's going to be at least one article about creators or talent suing a studio over their profit participation. And there's we do not have time to go into it, but there is a very cold calculation that occurs within the business affairs and accounting departments at these studios and at these the streamers were like, man, that just seems so complicated, let's just not offer any back end at all. Nailed it. Spoken like a true Silicon Valley person, right? No, 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 that's too complicated, let's just get rid of it, let's just slightly overpay them up front, and then we just get to keep all of it. So they took Hollywood accounting and took out all of the cumbersome things that were necessary to create the deceit that is your accounting statement. And they just got rid of that and said, no, we're just gonna pay your financiers slightly more than they spent on your movie, and we're gonna make all the money after that. So, that's another conversation that we should, if we do another one of these some days, we'll talk about that. But no, there again, this falls very, very neatly in the category of why we're at the moment we're at right now, and why the opportunity to do something so different it exists. And I think it really does come down to the power of the entertainment industry that allows them to dictate the economic terms is their ability to market, distribute, and exhibit. That's where their real power comes from. It does not come from writing the check to make the movie, because lots of people make movies with independent financing. The economics are set the moment you sell it to go into that system. You are no longer in control of the economics. You're beholden to their system. That is only true if they're the only game in town, and if they can still do it well enough that everybody's like, all right, yeah, yeah, sure, I'm not getting my back end points, but I did get paid really well, and I'm flying private. No, nobody can complain, right? Blah 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 blah. Well, guess what? That is no longer true. The industry no longer has the stranglehold that it did, because their existing systems are crumbling, and the data could not be more clear. You use the analogy that I say all the time. The audience is screaming for a change. And the big studios and the big streamers and all of these big platforms, they're looking an awful lot like the record industry to me. And they're not sure how to change, they're not sure how to pivot, but the creators are. And so anything that can empower those creators to meet audiences where they are, we think is going to win. And Bingeable, we hope, will be at least part of that equation.
Yeah, no, I believe you all are now positioned rather nicely to have a strong voice in the conversation, at least. And I really do hope you all get the success you deserve. Our mutual friend Darren introduced me to a book, Oversaturated, I believe it is,
Mm-hmm.
and um, just a fascinating topic. He kind of called me out on something, and rightly so, for kind of an assumption that he wrote a book and that he would just kind of put it out there to the masses just willy-nilly. And
Mm,
he really has a very strong strategic marketing mind to create over, this kind of opportunity for it to be ripe and in the right moment with the right people. And then the market then responds in a kind of
yeah.
oversaturated kind of way. And it
Mm,
really opened my mind up. It was a book that I now recommend to people. I
yeah.
guess from a sense of, so I used to be a police officer, and in the academy, we would watch these videos of these officers being wounded or hurt or sometimes, unfortunately, even killed, not from
Mm,
a sense of trying to Monday morning quarterback them and say, look, this is what they did wrong,
mm,
but to try to learn through their incident to
mm,
prevent us or another police officer from being also killed in line of duty or wounded
mm.
or extremely injured. And so I take that same sentiment with this next question, Stephen. I really truly am trying to come in from a place of care and concern and trying to understand and learn. And that is, where do you see the indies blowing it, and where do you see Hollywood blowing it? So indies, where are they messing up? How can we, identify that in Hollywood? Where are they blowing it?
So I'll answer it in reverse because I think it's important to understand, I think, first where the industry is blowing it. Um, so this is going to get a little wonky. Even though I went to art school, I'm a big lover of data, and there's a data point that I have been screaming about now for years. I first heard about this in 2019. It has since grown over 500%. The number I saw in 2019 has grown over 500%, and it has to do with subscription cycling. And what that so currently over 53% of all consumers say, according to Statista, say that they subscribe to a platform only to what because there's something they want to watch.
Mhm.
They subscribe, they watch, they cancel, and then they move on to the next platform.
Yeah.
That is devastating for subscription-based platforms. That creates what's known as churn. There is a magic number of churn that you can tolerate. The
Yep.
reason why Netflix and all of these other companies are laying people off is is not, they're still technically profitable. That churn has grown to the point where they know it is no longer sustainable. And more importantly, the marketplace is speaking. They are treating subscription VOD, SVOD, like transactional VOD, TVOD, right? They are renting those movies. They're paying to watch it and then leaving. No different than going to a movie theater, but they're sitting at home, right? So that behavior to me speaks to the fact that the biggest mistake that the entertainment industry made was that they stopped being in the business of making and selling movies and TV shows and got into the business of selling subscriptions.
Yeah.
That's their product.
Hmm.
And if consumers don't want that product anymore, which they are saying very, very clearly they don't, then you're screwed.
Right.
And that leads me to and just like what happened in the music business, the studios and everybody just became completely beholden to that. That's their business model now. So there is no upside for them anymore, right? And theatrical, the releases for movies and things like that, they're a fraction of what they used to be. And yes, you have a couple that can do massive numbers, but again, we can do a deep dive on the data. The numbers are terrible. Don't look at the revenue. Look at the number of tickets sold since 2016. Look at that number, and that's where you see the catastrophic reality for most films. The mistake that indie filmmakers are making is thinking that that's still where they want to be.
Hmm.
They still want to be in that system. They want to be part of that system because that's that I've made it. I sold my movie to Netflix. My movie is on Netflix. My movie did well on Netflix. All of that stuff. I did a theatrical release. I'm telling you, guys, that model is terrible for indie film. It is almost impossible to recoup and break even on an indie film. It's not impossible. It's almost impossible. We're back down to that 1% versus 99%. If you say, I'm going to go that route because that's where all of my filmmaking idols showed their films, and that's the experience I want for my films. I get it. I totally understand. Every movie that I have ever loved has been made by the system that we're kind of crapping on right now, right? So I get it. It is what formed me as a storyteller, as an artist. I love it, but it's a rotten business model. And as an indie filmmaker, if you were thinking my goal is to get independently financed so that, by my uncle who's a successful dentist, and I'm going to go make my movie, and then I'm going to go to Sundance, and I'm going to go to Tribeca, I'm going to go to Cannes, God willing, and I'm going to sell my movie. And guess what? A, no, you're probably not. B, if you do, it will be for a deal that is capped. It's just like, here's your check. Thanks for coming by. And that model sucks. That model sucks. And if you wind up selling it to a sales agent who, goes and gets a distribution deal for you, the math is so terrible. Think about it like this. If somebody spends $10 at the box office, and these are averages. If for those who don't follow Stephen follows, you should, because he's kind of the data guru that I read vociferously. But he was the first one who really kind of broke this out that I saw. This was years ago now. Um, and these numbers vary, but if you do a theatrical release, if somebody spends $10 at the box office, just for simple math, about $5 of that is going to go to the cinema. About $3.50 of that is going to go to the distributor. About $1 of that is going to go to the sales agent. So I went to art school, but that sounds like to me that 95 cents of every dollar is going to someone else, and only 5 cents of every dollar, best case scenario, is going to recouping the cost of production. And by the way, the marketing that they did, which you may or may not ever be able to prove that they actually did it, but the marketing they're charging you for, you have to recoup out of that 5 cents. So it's a horrible business model. Yes, I understand the allure. I get it. I want my movies in the theaters too, because it's really, really cool. But there's what this new era, what we refer to as the next wave of cinema, is about much more about making movies that are specifically designed for specific audiences who share an affinity with the story or an affinity with the cast, that have a direct connection to them, and delivering it directly to them, bypassing the middlemen, making it so that your financiers, in the bingeable model, the financiers recoup from 16 times the amount of gross revenue of a traditional theatrical release, simply because we've gotten rid of all the middlemen, because it is talent to fan, and then even potentially fan to friend. And there are, minimal costs that go into that. And so you're going to be able to recoup much faster, from fewer sales. None of this Warner Brothers telling us that the movie that's grossed well over $1 billion is still in the red. That's not possible with this model.
Yeah, I mean, when Peter Jackson, after Lord of the Rings, had to sue New Line
Mhm.
Cinema, for this, even though he had the right to, pay his own accountant to do the books, and he did all that, they were so frustrated with him, they refused to do anything with it. So much so, of course, where he had to take him to court, and of course,
Yep.
won, which is
Yeah.
why he never thought The Hobbit would get made. He thought, man, but there was just too much money that it just goes to show, they were willing to
Yeah.
put it aside. And sorry
Yeah.
about our interesting bookkeeping. In the article I wrote, I titled it something like, it's just what the industry now expects, unfortunately, and they just accept. It kind of reminds me of that of Weinstein.
Mm.
People knew for a while he was kind of the guy, and the way he was, nobody was really calling him out except for maybe I think Brad Pitt put him in the corner
Yeah.
one time. But other
Yeah.
than that, people just kind of was like, "Oh, that's him." So this
Hmm.
bookkeeping, it's like enough's enough, and we now have the technology to kind of move past that and
Yeah.
go beyond it. Um, where do I? So I'm in an interesting dilemma where I have a little bit of capital that a good friend of mine has given me for an independent film. and I have several scripts, ready to go. And I have one in particular that I think we can do it for this low budget. But I went to my sales agent friend of mine and basically said, you just got back from Cannes. What do you need? What's selling that you don't have? And of course, without hesitation, he's like, action. Action's
Mhm.
definitely king. And then the subsidiaries of that, like fantasy and sci-fi, which that's pretty much what I do is fantasy and sci-fi because to your point, I know that niche audience. I am them. I can market to them. I can find them. They're on every continent. Every culture has a dragon, so I know my
Yeah.
audience, right? I am them. But I am nervous that he might be right. But what do you say to people? Because I'm not in my 20s anymore. And I can't, keep working for free or just constant sweat equity. So at 52, I'm trying to discern what I should do. And a buddy of mine just wrapped up a feature that I helped him, very small help him out on, where he was definitely the tank producer that got it over the goal line, but I just helped associate producer a little bit. But he was just talking about the grueling nature, and his film was like 600,000, and he was like, I don't know that I would be willing to do a film like that again for like 500K. I think at least it's got to be like, 750. And yet my buddy in the sales part is over there screaming, like, don't do that. You're not going to make your money, be
Mm.
careful. And so I'm in this, I don't know really kind of what to do. And I'd love to get your
Mm.
real-time thoughts, filmmaker to filmmaker.
Same.
Do I with my producing partner, do we stick with like a $200,000 budget and go out with that? Or do we try to parlay that as first money in and we're going to try to get up to about 500,000? And so it's those two scenarios that I'm just
Yeah.
having a heck of a time with. But we all know a $200,000 movie, though possible, I'm not getting paid.
Right.
Get paid. The writer is going to get paid like piddly, which is so frustrating because as a fellow
Yeah.
artist, I never want to do that. But you also want to create. So, anyways, I'd love to get your
Mm.
thoughts on that real world scenario that I think is playing
Same.
out for a lot of filmmakers.
At the risk of offending your sales agent friend, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
What is the sales agent's business model?
Yeah, it is definitely the old paradigm. You try to get the biggest star you can attach the name
No,
attached.
no, no, no. What's their business model?
It's to create that film, that widget, and then try to sell it to the international buyers that they have relationships with.
They're it was a loaded question. Let me tell you what the answer I'm trying to get to. Their business model is the collection of minimum guarantees.
Yeah, right,
That's their business model.
right.
They are going to take this product of yours uh, and try to get as many checks for it so that their commission that they get from that minimum guarantee makes it worth their time.
Yeah,
That's what they do. Um, there's a tendency to kind of do shotgun approach. Let's sell as many territories as we can. Let's blah 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 blah. There's not a lot of strategic thinking in that industry. This is no slight on your friend. Your friend might be someone who thinks very much this way, and there are sales agents who are more likely to think of the industry this way, especially now because their business is struggling, man. I mean, it's a brutal time to be a sales agent. But again, similar to the way the entertainment industry's product is not movies and TV shows, it's subscriptions. Sales agents' product, what they're trying to do is they're trying to get paid minimum guarantees or license fees that just their commission. They're a commission-based business, and so they're going to sell it wherever they can, however they can. So the first thing that I think you need to think about, and if you've read my LinkedIn newsletter that I do, and or go back into my Substack and read up, there's one kind of consistent theme, and that is that you need to be thinking like an entrepreneur. The filmmakers of the future, the ones who are going to be the most successful filmmakers in the future, are going to be what I call multipreneurs. They are artists, they are marketers, they understand the business, and they are thinking from the beginning of their film like a product. And and that means that you need to be thinking about distribution. And I would argue that distribution is a dying business, just like sales agents. I feel like it's a dying business. What you need to be thinking about, maybe beyond distribution, is actually just exhibition. And that means, how am I going to get the audience that is going to be most likely to want to watch this movie to watch it? And then from there, how am I going to get them to tell their friends about it? 96% of consumers, according to Nielsen, prefer a recommendation from someone they follow online to any form of advertising, and that includes movie trailers. They don't care. It doesn't matter. They are not moved by it. At best, you're getting the soft ROI of awareness, but the decision tree that they follow to decide whether or not to pay to consume something, has to do with the number of people they've heard recommend it online. And so you need to not just be thinking about how you connect directly with the fans who are most likely to want to watch your movie, but also how you empower them and incentivize them to become a recommendation network, a network of amplifiers for your film. If you were thinking in that way, my opinion is, you do not need a sales agent. You do not need a distributor. You need a methodology of connection and getting your product in front of those people. That's what Bingeable is built to do, right? And obviously, I'm not trying to sell you on Bingeable, but in that context,
Yeah.
Bingeable is an affiliate platform for movies and TV shows, where the affiliates are the movie stars, the artists who provide music for the soundtrack, and the fans. They are the affiliates, and they get paid every time one of their followers rents or buys the movie through them. That's it. It's a very straight up sort of commission based, affiliate model. But unlike the traditional model, one of your affiliates could be Ryan Reynolds because he's in your movie, right? I mean, imagine if you're thinking about how you're going to get a movie to an audience, one of the things to consider is cast. Who can I get who has a direct relationship with fans through social media, or frankly, however, that is going to be able to be the marketing energy behind this movie. He or she is going to get it to their followers and fans, and then those fans are going to get it to their friends. That, if you're thinking of it that way, that's what Bingeable is built to do. And in that regard, this is the math that we look at. And this is based on what we learned from Amplifier for the last 15 plus years of doing this for the biggest stars, brands, media companies in the world. There is a math that comes out of that. And this is why you have to be a multipreneur, because I'm not talking to the artist, Ron. I'm talking to the businessman, Ron. But here's how we set our calculations on budget. This is how we determine the maximum budget on a film for the cost of production and marketing, because that's one number that has to be recouped. And we always package our financing with both of those things included, so that the financier, that's part of the transparency. They know exactly how much they have to recoup from day one, right? This is what we're going to spend to make it. This is what we're going to spend to market it. So um, the way we do it, we refer to it as uh, the social media footprint conversion rate, SMFCR. I know it's a mouthful. Here's how we do it. We make a general calculation of the social media footprint of the film. That includes the talent, actors, soundtrack artists. Great way to build up your SMF. They usually have more followers than any movie star, right? So stack that deck, get them all on board, get them understanding that they are going to have the ability to market and sell this movie directly to their followers and get $1 gross revenue participation, not the myth that Hollywood promises. The actual, if somebody spends $10 to watch this movie, you're going to get $2. That's how the bingeable model works. You get 20% commission. This is actual money coming to you that you make because you close the sale, right? So you build up that social media footprint. You then create the total social media footprint for the film. Okay. Then you multiply that times 0.01. then you multiply that number by the estimated retail price, what you're going to sell it for. And that equals your maximum budget for production and marketing. So if we're doing simple math, remember I went to art school, so it has to be simple. 10 million social media footprint times 0.01. In other words, 1% of them are going to spend, let's say, $10 to watch it. That means the maximum budget for production and marketing is 10 million. So if your budget is 200,000, you just reverse engineer that number and say, I have to have an SMF of this minimum. And then I have to figure out the best ways to get 1%. But if 1% transact and watch this movie, we break even. If 2% transact and watch this movie, we double our money. 3%, we triple, right? So that's the math. That's the logic. So that's what I would recommend is just think about it. And look, and by the way, you can do this using Bingeable, or you can do it other ways. There are other methods. We're not the solution. We're just a solution, right? And there's so many exciting things happening. There are so many really, really cool things that are coming up. But the way we think of it, I think, is probably the best way for indie filmmakers to be thinking about their about the business of their movie or TV show that they're trying to produce.
So in a perfect bingeable dream world project, would that really cater towards not cater towards, would that really elevate the influencer model?
Hmm.
Now, obviously, assuming if you have an A-list talent in today's time, in 2025, they probably have
Sure.
some type of social media presence just by
Sure.
the fact that they might not be on it themselves, but they have a team that's doing it. But they have a social media footprint that can magnify,
Hmm.
and their numbers are probably also skewed a little bit too because get on talk shows and all that. But if you
Sure.
have because I have a friend of mine who has done well on YouTube early in
Yeah.
YouTube, and he has a nice, very nice niche. He does these little miniatures, tabletop
Hmm.
miniatures for board games. And so I
Hmm.
put him in my fantasy film, and he's
Hmm.
quite a good actor. And
Hmm.
so that social media connection. But I'm trying to get. I understand the formula for Bingeable, but in your
Yeah.
mind, what would be the perfect project? Like I'm out there listening, I hear I've got this project. Oh my gosh, I need to reach out to Bingeable. What does that project in your mind look like?
Yeah. Well, so first of all, I want to be very clear that there are lots of ways to beef up a social media footprint. You don't have to necessarily go get somebody who is famous for makeup tutorials and put them in your movie. Cast it for the right cast. The people who fit the role, right? Make sure that the film, look, no matter what your social media footprint is, if the movie sucks, it's not going to work, right? If it's bad, and there's just not much you can do about it from that point. Nothing in this is a panacea. But for sure, one of the things that I would suggest to you is um, that young actors coming up who may not have been in a big movie yet, but are incredibly talented,
Yeah.
um, uh, have social media as their second language. They already know how to do it. And oftentimes, many of them will already have a healthy little following, right? And it doesn't take a ton. There's lots of data to suggest that the bigger the social media footprint of a particular talent does not necessarily translate to a higher conversion rate. In fact, because of the way algorithms work on the social media platforms, like they're often throttled more than this young up and coming actor who maybe only has 100,000 followers, but they're connected to them because they actually really like that person, and they are probably even more likely to engage. So I would argue, especially with a budget of 200,000. Which again, if I'm doing the math reverse in my head, that means you need a 2 million social media footprint at 1% paying $10 to justify your budget. Now, again, I would add in the marketing to that as well, which typically we kind of try to make it so that out of the total, 80% is production, 20% is marketing. Because while the amplification marketing model will dramatically reduce your the ratio of dollars spent to audience reached, it'll dramatically reduce it, but it's never zero. You're still going to have to do a little bit of traditional marketing, PR, things like that are still incredibly effective when it comes to entertainment. So it's never going to be zero. But again, just for the sake of simple math, say 200,000. Well, you need a 2 million social media footprint. You could get that from, a few actors who have 100,000, 200,000 social media followers, or one band that has 10 million social media followers, right? That and put them in the soundtrack. But cast the talent that should be in the movie. So that's the first thing. The other thing is the creator economy is exploding. It's absolutely exploding, and they use a totally different muscle group than stars, movie stars, musicians. Like they approach things in a completely different way. What I really suggest is that you build a team of people who are going to use creator economy methods, techniques, and platforms to bring audiences into your movie before you even start making it. Make them part of the journey. It's Ryan, and I have said this quote so many times that people are going to just start getting mad at me. But it is one of the most poignant quotes, and it might be a great way to sort of wrap up. I know we're running super long here. One of my gifts is to go long. Um, but Ryan Reynolds, who is inarguably one of the most successful social media marketers in the world,
Yeah.
it's almost undeniable. He's built $2 billion brands off the back of his social media. Um, uh, and those are for his side hustles, right? It's not even his day job. It's his side hustles, Mint Mobile and Aviation Gin, right? Um, the guy's brilliant. He understands the power of social media marketing like almost no one else out there. There are a few who are close, but none of them have monetized it the way he has. Um, and he said something that is extraordinary, and I think it should be guiding all of us in everything that we're doing when we're thinking about how we're going to build audiences for our projects. He said that people want a sense of ownership over the success of something. What we used to refer to it as the behind the velvet rope feeling. That anecdote that I told you about street team marketing an hour and a half ago or whenever it was, the idea of feeling like I'm part of the team, I'm involved, I am going to help make this thing successful because it's something I love, it's something I care about, and the people who are making it have included me. And if I work really hard, they might even notice me. And if they notice me, they might actually lift me up, and that becomes such a huge motivator of getting people to want to amplify your project, build community, build an audience for your film, so that when you release the movie, you're not having to spend all of your marketing money up front in advance to get people to tune in on the first weekend, or you're dead.
Hmm.
You have potentially thousands, hundreds of thousands, man, maybe even millions of people who are going to not only consume it, but become evangelists on your behalf. And is that's the future of film. And in my opinion, indie film makers are the ones most ideally suited to do that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, yeah, I do believe we're kind of coming down to it. So, I did want to just allow you the opportunity, because I'm a fan, for people to understand what are you working on? What are you working on next? Is it
Mm.
bingeable? Are you all out and about, and people can go and potentially consider that as a platform? Where can they
So,
get a hold to you? Where can they follow you? Any kind of
yeah. So, not necessarily knowing the makeup of your audience, I'm going to assume that a lot of the people who are listening to this are either aspiring or working filmmakers. So I'm gonna focus on this message to them. First of all, it is my opinion that we are entering uh, the indie film revolution, and that the future is unbelievably bright. I think we're about to enter what we call the next wave of cinema. I think will be the next golden era of storytelling and story making, which I like story making maybe a little better. Um, it's an exciting time, but you need to immerse yourself in a different way of thinking. And I know this is hard. None of this stuff I'm describing is easy.
Yeah.
It's a heavy lift. It's a big job to make all of this happen. But there is an incredible future ahead of us, and I think we should all be excited. I think as far as and the best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. That's where I'm doing the majority of my kind of sharing of thoughts and ideas. My newsletter, as I described, called Entertaining the Future, is available on LinkedIn and Substack. It's free. Um, and so that's a good place to connect with me. As far as where Bingeable is, as I mentioned earlier, I would say we are working to come out of our alpha stage. The platform is up; it works. We have movies available on there right now, and if you have a film or somebody that wants to get involved, we can put the movie up and put it out. But this alpha phase has taught us a lot of stuff of things that we want to change, that we want to do differently. So we're in the process of kind of revamping, especially on the front end. The back end works great. It does exactly what we wanted to do. It's transparent accounting, all of that is working, and that was no easy task. But the user experience is something that we're working on that I think we can really dramatically improve. So we're kind of in the midst of that. We are also making some very interesting moves in kind of what I will call alternative formats, that are very, very exciting. We've got some great partnerships that we're working on, that we're working with right now. We were very fortunate. Just the second project that we ever produced, a short film called The Last Ranger, got nominated for an Academy Award last year, which we were extremely proud of. That group is working on something new, and we're going to be a part of that. We've got a couple of other projects that Bingeable is involved as at the producer stage, as well as ultimately as the exhibition platform. So you know, I don't have a great estimate as to exactly when the kind of the next phase is going to happen. We're still working on a bunch of different things. But we're here and we're hustling and we're trying to bring in as many people as possible. Whether you're going to use Bingeable or not is a secondary consideration. I hope you'll hear what we're talking about, and it will inspire you to to think about these things while you are trying to get your movie ready to go. And then if it is, then call us up, man. Let's figure out how we can help each other. There like I said, there are other platforms, there are other things doing different things. Nobody's quite doing what we're doing yet, but there are lots of ways to get your movie out. So, you know, just learn, go out there and learn, pay attention to what's happening, see what consumers want. You have the opportunity now, in my opinion, to make a movie that is for a small targeted audience with a budget. If you use our formula, the budget will reflect the size of your audience, and so you have a much higher likelihood of breaking even and even turning a profit. And stop. Hollywood is decimated by the fact that they have to hit home run after home run, play Moneyball, get on first base, and then get on first base again, and then get on first base again. And if you do it enough times, you'll have hit a home run. right? You'll be scoring points. So we have the opportunity to think in a smaller way, but most importantly, and this is I think really really critical, the future of filmmaking, and Bingeable was built with this in mind, is so that the creators maintain ownership of their intellectual property. Stop selling your entire project and the ownership in that project to somebody that fails 99% of the time to turn a profit and will lie to you about how much money it's made in order to keep more for themselves. Why should that be your path? There's another way. The market has changed. You can go direct to consumer. You can do it your own way, and that should be incredibly inspiring and exciting. So get to work.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Well, I appreciate you all watching and listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and just let us know that you're out there. It's important for Stephen and I to know that what we're saying matters. We hope it does help the channel also, and I believe it is just a good responsiveness to show that we are an audience, we have a voice, and to kind of magnify that voice. So I believe we are, though, good to conclude our discussion with Stephen Murphy, or I'm sorry, Murray. And remember, nothing is wasted.